Okay, so we all know a person who seeks to reduce non-human animal suffering. We are all surrounded by zoophilists, but do we care enough like Robert Grillo does? Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Robert Grillo, a renowned American activist, author, and speaker for all species. Thank you for joining us, sir. We are really glad to have you on board.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Sir, could you please share a few of your notable and successful initiatives with us?
Sure. Well, currently we're working on campaigns to target powerful people in our food system. So we are working on particularly people in the chicken industry that wield a lot of power and money and influence in government. And so our main focus is to try to get their attention and to build awareness about how they're corrupting our food system.
Right.
The other thing I'm working on is a book right now about strategies to build a grassroots movement to change our food system.
Okay, that sounds amazing. When are we going to read it?
Oh, it could be a while because at this point I'm just in the proposal stage, and so the proposal is used to pitch to publishers.
Yes.
To try to get interest from publishers, and so yeah, it's hard to say when that's going to be available yet, but it could be a year. It might be longer. Unfortunately, I wish it could be sooner.
All right, we'll wait. Okay, so moving to the next question. Speciesism has become popular in recent times. What's your take on it?
Well, I looked recently at the research that was done by a group in England called Animal Think Tank. And what they did is survey a lot of people about different words and in animal rights and animal freedom. They call it animal freedom movement. Speciesism was one of those words that they found that most people either didn't understand very well or it did not resonate with them. It didn't connect with them the way maybe we would like them to, like racism or other isms. And so it's not that they advised against talking about or using the word speciesism. They did find it was less impactful than other kinds of language, like, for example, animal freedom instead of animal rights. So freedom has a lot of positive connotations to it in many cultures of the world. And rights has more a political type of orientation that might alienate some people in the conservative side of things. So interesting research they did. I definitely suggest taking a look at Animal Think Tank's recent work. As far as speciesism as a concept, of course, I mean, it's useful for us in terms of inside of the movement to talk about speciesism, and you know, I just don't know if it's the right framing for trying to win the public, if that makes sense.
Right. So in your book, you voiced dissatisfaction with the world of business. Would you kindly elaborate?
Well, I think business has a role. We're talking about like how to carry out a social movement. And I think in my book, I was referring to in the last chapter, different kinds of activism different theories of change on our movement, and I definitely think that money can corrupt a social movement, and I don't think there's enough concern for that in our particular movement. I think there's a lot of great, well-intentioned people, very talented people, but unfortunately, money can corrupt a movement and nonprofits, just as they can corrupt government officials, just as they can corrupt very wealthy people in the private sector. So investing in business ventures is different to me than carrying out a social movement and organizing people, everyday people, working people, to commit to a cause. That's a very different proposition.
Absolutely. So most of our viewers are from India. So this question is especially for the people, for the audience of India. So, considering India as the epicenter, what are your thoughts on the practice of animal sacrifice in all of humanity's religions?
What are my thoughts on animal sacrifice? You asked, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's an unfortunate legacy in most civilizations, and some of them still exist today. I don't think it's specific to any particular culture or race, because if we look at our history, obviously across the world and at different times, even human sacrifice was practiced in certain cultures. And I think the important lesson about what that tells us is that they are public displays of violence, which has a very specific purpose to instill upon the spectators that being is less than us. It's the idea that we can do this to them because they serve us, and they serve a greater purpose when they serve us. So when there's a ritual of like Kaporos in the Jewish Orthodox tradition, the swinging around of the chicken is an atonement ritual in which it's not a slaughter. Well, they do slaughter the animals actually after that, but the idea is that the animal makes the sacrifice for humans to cleanse them spiritually as well as of physical ailments, and so that's the important idea, I think, behind animal sacrifice, that we are demonstrating to an audience that this being is less than us and we're more important than them, and therefore we get to do this to them.
Exactly, yes. Okay. Moving forward, so animal rights activists have historically painted red paint on people wearing fur as a form of protest. What are your thoughts on this form of activism?
Mass protest movement is one of the most important traditions in all social movements throughout history. A mass protest, rallying people to come out and oppose something. One of the most important traditions in civil resistance. It plays just as important a role in our movement as it does in all movements, and we should take it very seriously. The other side, the other tradition in this country and in the West, it's also very much inspired, though, by the work of Gandhi. So it kind of has an international dimension to it, because Gandhi has been such an enormous influence on Western activists and organizers. But the other tradition that's important is what we call structure-based organizing.
Right.
And it's basically kind of like the inside game, where we try to change things from the existing power structure, whereas the protest movement seeks to change things from the outside, to change the system itself, because they believe it's just too corrupt to try to change from the inside. So those two traditions have worked together at times in different movements. They've also been in conflict with each other. There's been conflict, but ideally they work together because we're stronger if we work together.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So, in an interview with another organization, you referred to truth-centered advocacy. What, according to you, best describes this?
Oh boy, that's going back a few years. But I like thanks for bringing that up. But that goes back to my book in 2016. I think what I meant, I'm looking back on this now almost 7 years later since I wrote the book. My ideas have evolved a lot since that time. But at the time when I was referring to truth-centered advocacy, I believe I was pointing to integrity and the importance of having integrity as activists, to be believable, to be trusting, to win the public's trust. We must have integrity. We must be able to tell the truth, because if they sense that we're lying or we're trying to mislead them. So, for example, if what we really care about is the devastating impact of animal agriculture on the planet and on animals, and the extinction of animals and the terrible treatment of domestic animals, if that's what our issue really is with this industry, then our job as activists is to compel people to understand and to appreciate that argument. When we try to use other tactics to get them to agree with us or persuade them, I think that can easily backfire, because they will then accuse us of they will accuse us and say, oh, well, your real agenda was, to try to end animal agriculture because you think it's wrong to use animals in this way. So it does come back to haunt us sometimes if we try to deceive people into believing or into joining our movement. We should always have integrity and honesty, because there's just so much misinformation out there. We don't want to add to that.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I was getting at.
Okay. So you have addressed the subject of human washing in your book. Could you please enlighten us about it?
Humane washing is perhaps the most pervasive narrative used by the animal industries, animal agriculture and others,
Okay.
To try to persuade the public that there is a humane way to do bad things, to exploit and kill animals for profit. And so it's really important for us to identify it and name it, call it out, because it has this way of being able to intercept people from considering veganism. Because if they think that they don't have to consider veganism or animal freedom, and they just have to settle for humane conditions, then if they believe that, then we've lost our position. So we have to be able to really fight this narrative, because it's very pervasive.
Okay. So, Farm to Fable discusses a variety of fictions that a culture as a whole uses to justify eating animals. How can we alter that?
Well, there's many ways to, I think it's not just enough to expose the fictions in everyday conversations with people. We have to engage in a social movement. We have to carry out a social movement that targets those in power, that really hold the power for the current conditions of our food system. And we have to do campaigns and movement building that strategically targets those powerful people, ideally in a public venue, so that the public is also the part of our audience, and really starts to challenge the dominance of animal agriculture and a call for the advancement of a plant-based food system. So beyond just, talking to people one-on-one, which I feel that most of our movement is engaged in these kind of one-on-one personal transformation activities. And I know some people get a lot out of that and it's very rewarding for them, but I think what we're missing primarily is focus on dominant institutions and really challenging power holders in our food system to demand that they change things.
Thank you, sir. We are really glad to have you on our platform, and we are really looking forward to know you more in the upcoming podcasts. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, sir.